Hello, good evening everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel and my vlog for this month. I am Dr. Michael C. and today we are going to talk about tips on how to move on with your thesis amid COVID-19 and the enhanced community quarantine. So as promised, I posted a poster yesterday and I mentioned that I will be posting a YouTube channel, a YouTube video because for several months I haven't posted anything. But since my things to do are running out, I decided to post something. And I think the theme for today's post is that walang social distancing sa thesis kung isa kang graduate student. Well, today is April Fool's Day, but something truthful for all of you today. Hindi yon April Fool's Day joke. It's something that you need to accept. If you're doing your thesis right now, you have to accept that you need to complete it and finish it. Sayang naman kasi if you just put it on hold and put it in a parking lot. There's so much things to do during the enhanced community quarantine and I hope you make the most out of it. So without further ado, I'd like to give you 5 tips on how to move on with your thesis. Okay, so just an introduction on this vlog. I just want you to realize that we have been in an enhanced community quarantine for 2 weeks, going 3 weeks right now, and sobrang daming nating time na meron, especially when you are asked to stay at home. If you're not a frontliner, I'm sure you're just staying at home. And I'm sure marami na rin kayong nalinis or marami na kayong naayos sa mga kwarto ninyo or sa mga bahay-bahay ninyo. And you must be busy with other things. But if you are doing your thesis, I'm sure na nakakalikalimutan mo siya at this point. Pero I think watching this vlog will just remind you that hey, you need to start working on it. You need to make the most out of the quarantine period and start doing your thesis. So, okay, so now let's move on to tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to revisit your personal and professional goal. Okay, so most of you decided to enter a graduate program with a goal. Of course, that's inevitable and that's a default thing for you. So unang-una, ano ba yung personal goal mo? Is this something that you find self-fulfilling? Is this something that you want your parents or your family, your friends to be very proud of? Is this something that you would like to do for your future children? Okay, and another thing is you need to also revisit your professional goals. Are you doing this so that you can get promoted? Are you doing this because your boss asks you to finish a master's or a PhD degree? Or do you want to go to a research track career so you need to start getting higher degrees? Okay? You need to revisit your personal and professional goals. Bakit mo nga ba to unang ginawa? Bakit mo to sinimulan? Okay? At bakit mo to kailangan tapusin? I'm sure that most of you are feeling numb about the idea that you're doing your master's or your PhD or nawawalan ka na ng gana. But I think that is normal. Lahat naman ng mga nag-graduate studies will feel that way. It is not a linear path. It is not something na will make you always motivated. There will be times that you will be demotivated. But then again, if you feel demotivated, there will always be a space in time that will motivate you. And I hope that that next step that you're gonna do will make you finish that thesis. So that's tip number 1. Revisit your personal and professional goals. Tip number 2 would be make a revised timeline. As we all know, most of our schedules have been canceled, have been postponed. Maraming mga na-move, especially if you are enrolled in an academic program, most of your schedules have been moved 3 weeks or 4 weeks further down the line because may mga logistical problems and concerns. But what I want to tell you now is it's time for you to reassess and revise your timeline. So in my case, most of my master's and PhD students, I ask them to make their timeline at the very beginning when they start doing their thesis, because I think it's a good it's prudent and it gives them a compass on where they're gonna go and where they are directed to. It's okay to have some allowance in your timeline. Pwede yon. It's good to also put in rest breaks in your timeline. But it's very important that you have your goals in your timeline. Especially like yung mga months, kailan nyo kailangan mag-submit, ano yung month ng graduation. You have to put that in mind. Again, I remember some people will always say, put the end in mind. And I think that's one thing that you need to do, is to revise your timeline and put the end in your mind right now. Where you're gonna go and how do you see yourself in the next coming months or in the next year. Okay? Tip number 3 is to set a time for your thesis every day. Okay, so this is going to be difficult, I believe. Pero encourage ko lang kayo that when I say set a time for your thesis, hindi siya 1 to 2 hours lang. I usually, personally, I would block off half of my day, 6 to 8 hours of my day, just doing thesis. And when I say I block it for thesis, hindi naman ibig sabihin 6 hours to 8 hours kang nagsusulat. It just means that you're just putting all your mind, your effort in that thesis, whether you're thinking for what to write, whether you're going to read, you're going to do research online, or you're gonna go to the library to research for white papers or mga archives in the library. But now it's not possible. So ngayon, puro online. But that just means that during the 6 to 8 hours that you have set every day, you are just thinking about your thesis. So yun yung ibig kong sabihin. So 6 to 8 hours a day, set that time every day habang nasa community quarantine ka pa. Since most of you, I'm not saying all, but most of you are asked to stay at home because that will really help prevent the spread of the virus. So, yung pwede mong gawin right now is really to set a time during the day, and of course, kung pwede, set a space for you. If you have your own room or if you have your living room, pakiusapan mo na yung mga kamag-anak na kasama mo sa bahay and have that space for you as you are writing your thesis. So, yun yung tip number 3. Set a time for your thesis every day. Tip number 4 is just write something. Just write something. Okay, I'm sure you might feel pressured that when your thesis advisors asks you to write your thesis, baka ini-expect nyo that you're gonna write several pages in your thesis. When I say just write something, it doesn't have to be a full chapter. It can be 3 sentences na naka-bullet points. It can be as easy as that. I think important lang talaga is to have that discipline to write something in a day. Yung isusulat nyo ngayon might not be something that will be published later on, but I think that idea is important to be written first so that you can build on the idea that will later be published. So just write something. It can be a word, it can be a phrase, it can be paragraphs if you wish. It can be bulleted. It doesn't have to be in a narrative paragraph already. So I would just encourage you to just write something, okay? Write something on your, whether on paper or in your laptop or in your computer. So that's tip number 4. Just write something. Yun. And tip number 5 would be have a thesis buddy. Okay. This kind of suggestion is it's case to case. It depends. Hindi siya laganap sa maraming graduate programs, but for me, having a thesis buddy is really helpful. hindi kailangan na yung thesis buddy mo would be a classmate of yours in the graduate school. In my case, I had a thesis buddy na kaklase ko sa bachelor's degree ko, pero nag-aaral siya sa ibang bansa din. He's also doing his PhD. So we're in separate programs, we're in separate universities, separate countries where we studied. Pero we always exchange our ideas. So if I write something, if I have a manuscript, I ask him to review it, whether for grammar or for content, because I know he's very objective as well. So I ask him to be my thesis buddy, to be accountable to what I'm writing, because I also want to see other people's perspective. So when you say a buddy, hindi naman ibig sabihin isang person lang yun. It can be two people. And siguro, you just have to make sure that when you say buddy, hindi ito yung friend mo lang that who will always praise you or tell you good things. It has to be someone, or he or she has to be someone na marunong maging objective when it comes to scientific writing or academic writing. Somebody who is keen, somebody who is preferably sana keen or medyo OC, no, when it comes to content and format, no, in terms of academic writing. So having a thesis buddy is very, very helpful. Parang lang yan parang gym buddy, 'di ba? When we go to the gym, mas maganda kung meron kang kasamang isa or dalawang tao going with you to the gym so that you can enjoy the experience more, no? And I think that also applies for writing your thesis. So again, those are my 5 tips, and let me just review to you the first tip. That's to revisit your professional and your personal goals. Tip number 2 is to make a revised timeline. Okay? Number 3, set a time for your thesis every day. That's 6 to 8 hours in a day kung pwede. Okay? Tip number 4 is to just write something, whether it's a word, phrase, or a sentence, a paragraph, just write something. And tip number 5 is have a thesis buddy who is objective, who wants to also improve how you are doing with your thesis, and somebody who is accountable to you when it comes to your academic writing. So, for now, yun yung mga tips na maibibigay ko sa inyo, and I hope that you are all staying safe and staying healthy during this intense community quarantine. And I hope that after all of this, when the lockdown has been lifted, I hope that you have something to submit to your advisor, and so you can graduate and complete your degree and your thesis as you wish. Okay? So, God bless to all of you. I hope to see you again soon. Maraming salamat for listening. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, you can just write it down below.